Hey guys, I'm Taylor.
And I'm Erica.
And we're your hosts for Finding the Family. Finding the Family is a discipleship tool that we decided to create to bring in ministry leaders, professionals, and different conversations really about the idea of how to find your family identity in Christ. And this week, we're joined with our lead pastor, Mike Hill, to discuss time management. So be sure to stay tuned. All right, hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're here with lead pastor of Life Church, Mike Hill. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
It's so funny that the lead pastor, this is the thing Jenny always struggled. You could have just be like, this is just Mike Hill.
This is Mike.
Yeah, nobody really cares.
Mike's also...
I get why she laughs at the beginning of
every... all the time because I keep looking at her. Just say I'm Mike. Nobody really cares that I'm
Well,
the
we
lead
also,
pastor.
we have to take into consideration that we did have to kind of soften things down a little before we started because I'm also in his chair.
Yeah, well, again, I'm saying is anybody going to be watching this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so when they're watching this, just you can let Taylor know, does this look weird that I'm sitting on a couch with his wife?
Put in the comments, who do you think fits this seat better? Because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the screen
Okay.
says Mike
So
Hill right
when
now.
you're watching, does this look better or does this look better?
We talked about the couch and how he was going to sit close to
Yeah.
Erica. So.
Yeah, like this.
Again,
looks-
this feels better, right?
that's what we're saying.
Well, we also said the last time that us three sat in a circle was marriage counseling 2017.
It's been a
So
while.
we should have had my father-in-law, Steve, as a guest on the show as well.
Yeah,
Because
which
he
a big
sat
shout
for
We'll
out
get
to
there.
Steve Sims
Steve
because
Sims.
he's the best.
Homer.
He's the only probably cop in the Huntington hasn't pulled me over for a seatbelt ticket.
See?
Yeah.
Well, he's no longer a cop, though.
Oh yeah, that's
So-
right.
Well, if you get a federal case, if you catch a federal case, he'll be up there
Then
with
he'll
you.
be there for that.
Yeah, let's
So, Mike, today we're talking about time management and the role that pertains to the family. It's a big thing that we have 168 hours in a week. We have the same time in every household that God's given us, and it's really something I think that we as a church need to be really considerate of when we're talking about the importance of managing your time within your home, not only just as it pertains to your own life, but to the life of your family and your friends as well. So talk to us a little bit about what time management means and why that's important for us to learn today.
Yeah. So again, I think it's best to go back to why would I even care about time management, and it again, because when I first started youth ministry a long time ago, time management wasn't my thing. I'm just going to go and get the day done and whatever we're doing, we're going to get it done. And as the youth group was growing, one of the things that everybody would say is that I had a fun, charismatic personality. You could attract people. You're fun to be around. You could get people to come to about anything. But the biggest problem is no one's going to ever follow you because you're not organized, right? Mm-hmm. And so what stuck with me is this idea that what's going to be my greatest value long term? So is my greatest value going to be attracting people or leading people? Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was we got to figure out how to lead people, and so. Went through a course. It's a Franklin Covey course, 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Leader. Ended up getting a life coach, which was weird back then because I was hardly making any money and it cost $6,000 a year to get a life coach. But I was committed to the idea. And the other part that made me committed to it was the whole idea of a family. So what I was seeing was I was managing my household, but not leading it. And there's a significant difference. And I knew that I was managing my children, but I was not leading my children. And so I think that was the greatest desire for me is to learn how to be a leader. And in leadership, the only way you're going to be able to get that done is if you understand how to manage your time. Yeah. And again, for me, the biggest discrepancy is when people talk about time management, because everybody's busy, is they're like, you need time management because you're late for stuff, or you need time management because you can't get everything done in a day, or you need time management because, you're not meeting with enough people. I would completely disagree with that. Like, I don't think time management is how to get more done. I think time management is how to get the right things done.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the big difference.
That was a big thing when I first got hired here. We talked about like I had a different structure. My schedule was set every 24 hours. I knew exactly where I was going to go, where I was going to be. I didn't have to think about it. So then leaving a militant background to a ministry where it's like, just do ministry and really figuring out how to prioritize your time. Like you said, not to just manage your day, but to lead in the different roles that you have in life. That was challenging. And I remember one thing you said was, when you're meeting with people, it's not just to meet with people, because we could be really busy really fast. The one thing that stuck with me that you told me, it's like 2.5 years ago now, was you were like, you should be busy on purpose, meaning you should be thinking through what that next thing is and making sure there's a purpose and a priority to why that's there. Because otherwise we could just go through the mundane and say, yeah, I could make 20 meetings in 2 days, but it wouldn't be effective. Right. So yeah, managing my time was one thing. Learning how to, put block scheduling together was one thing, but then also to be like, now why is this person here? And how do I make sure that that's an effective meeting? Mm-hmm. That was another thing to learn.
Yeah. And being intentional about that is so important, because I feel like today in like our world, how much you get done is kind of like what people base your worth on, Yeah.
Yeah, no,
like I work all the time. I'm busy. I do this, I do that. And it's almost like you're up here if you get more done in a day, but that's not really what we should value, because it's about what are you doing with that time though.
Yeah. And that's a culture, again, like the military culture was the more you could accomplish and put down on paper, like all the little tasks you could do just made you look like you were a more effective sailor or whatever it would be. But I just remember looking back at that and I was like, that's the biggest waste of time. And half those things are just fillers. It's fluff. Like the raw stuff, like to be a better person, a better leader, that stuff was never really captured because the time was spent on doing those small little tasks to collect this larger list of accolades that never really translated to anything. And so, yeah, you come from this, don't know how to schedule your time, sit down in a really a job that's like kind of, it's dictated week to week or sometimes even day to day. Like you don't know what you're going to expect or what meetings are going to come up after Sunday, especially. Like there's things that you can look down the road and say, I know, we're working towards these goals in ministry, but really like that week is dictated by a lot of me sitting down, thinking through what I'm trying to accomplish and the people that are a part of those roles. And so like you mentioned, one other thing was like making teams and, how do you make a team though at home? And how does that even apply to someone at home? Because I can't recruit my 3-year-old and my 1-year-old to get the dishes done.
Well, I think the thing that we have to remember is exactly what you said. What's celebrated in culture is busyness, right? So anytime you talk to a person, how's things going? The natural response always is busy, right? Like I'm busy. I got a lot going on because again, we know that people celebrate that, so our natural response is always busy. So again, you do the best you can. And we think that that's a good thing is because it's celebrated in culture. And the other thing that you're taught, and I've said this, in the school system, you're taught this, in most jobs, you're taught this, is that you need to be a good manager, right? And so if you can manage your homework, right? So when you get home, you got this homework and set aside a time to be able to do it. And so you learn to manage structures. You don't really learn to lead it. So it's a completely foreign subject to most people, leadership, right? Yeah. And I've always said, like, if you want a picture of what leadership looks like, and I think this is what I said to my family and what I think all of us should think through. So I said, if you take your family up to the edge of a cornfield, right, and there's a path, right, and you look at that path, this is how most people lead their family. When you're going through the path, don't touch the corn stalks, stay in a straight line, don't wander off, get through at a fast pace, make sure we get through without destroying anything or getting in trouble, right? So you set your whole life up to make sure that there's a path already laid out for me. I just need to make sure there's a path already laid out for my children. So I just got to make sure that we get through that path with the least amount of collateral damage and them not getting lost in the cornfield. Leadership is we're going up to the edge of the cornfield and there is no path, but you can convince your family and the people around you that on the other side is something so great that you're willing to pick something up to start cutting a path.
Yeah.
Right. Ooh, and I think for us, we don't teach that. We don't teach our kids to engage in the path that God's laid out for them. We say engage in the managed path that culture has laid out for you.
Right.
So pick a career that culture laid out for you. Pick a way that culture. We don't teach our kids to think from a leadership type perspective. And so then when they get into these opportunities, because we got to remember our responsibility as parents is to train up a child in the way that they should go instead of manage up a child so they stay out of jail.
Right.
Right. Training up a child means training to be a leader, right? Like that's what we don't want them to depart from. Like we don't want them to depart from the idea of what does it mean to be a leader? Because you're called to lead your wife, not manage your home.
Correct.
Right. And that's not the way we more or less as husbands sometimes think our best responsibility. And honestly, it's celebrated. If you can manage your home well, you're doing really good. Or for a wife, like you manage your home well so your kids don't look like they just got out of the garbage can or they got clothes on when people come over or your house is picked
destroyed,
up. So if people walk in, your house is picked up. And again, although all of those things are important, they're not the most important thing. And so the way that we have to get around with that is, first of all, deciding. So what is it that we need to do to develop ourselves as leaders? What does it mean to lead? What does it mean to teach our children to lead? And how can they see it as an example with their dad? And how can they see it as an example of with their mom? And how can we teach and train them to be able to do that?
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing is the example. We've talked about this a lot in our home of like, how are we setting an example through our marriage, through the way that we parent, through the way that we interact with other people, because our kids are always watching. If you've had young kids, this, like they are sponges and they're taking in everything. Or if you've raised kids, and you see those little isms, like you have like a miniature Mike, maybe that would be like for the boys. And then you have a, Lexi would be a miniature Sherry. Like they have those habits about them because they're watching the example that you're setting. And I think one thing that we tend to forget is like, they're also watching how we're spending our time. Like we even talked about this before with just our phones or just the things we're doing. Like kids try to imitate you and imitate the things that you're doing. And so what we've said is we have to be really, really proactive rather than reactive about what we're allowing in our home. And so thinking about how we're spending our time really broke down to, well, what do we value? Like, do we value just sitting on the couch and watching movies with our kid? Because that's quality time. That's intentional time. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But we've said if that just becomes like the only thing we do, that's not enough. So how are we taking the time and the roles to say, like as a father, I'm spending time with my kids to make sure that I'm showing them what a father is. And as a husband, I'm showing them how you should treat a spouse. But really, if you look back at your 168 hours, we've talked about this before, like it's a value-based system. Like your time is prioritized around the things that you like to do and you value. And we've said, several times from the front on Sundays, like you can look at someone's time and money and you can tell them everything that they value.
Yeah, but if you think through it, I mean, think about kids in general, right? So when a kid is going through what we would consider is a poor decision or they're making bad decisions, what we tend to do is take the decision out of their hand. Right. So I tell the story to everybody. So when Brady was in middle school, he thought it was a great idea to date somebody that was in high school. And so Sherry had a big view on what that looked like. And so, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, but he decided that he's going to keep doing it. And so she's like, we're going to take his phone. We're going to do this. And so she went through, we're going to take the decision out of your hand. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to meet with him every Friday morning for breakfast, and I'm going to help remake his value system. Because the reason that he's doing it is because he values it. That's why he's dating this girl or wants to date this girl. And what I want to teach him is not to obey the rules, but to make a decision based upon a value system, because obeying the rules only works when somebody was watching. Value systems happen when nobody's watching.
Right. It's that integrity piece.
So I met with him it took a year and like 2 months, and we'd meet every Friday, and he dated
her this whole time?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so a year and 2 months. And then finally, the one Friday morning, he came to me and he says, Dad, I have the list of why I'm going to break up with her. And he had made a list of why it did not make sense for him to do it. And that day he did it. And so to me, you're teaching your kids, again, how to lead based upon something that's internally changed and not how to be managed following the rules. Because when you give them, not that we shouldn't have rules, right? Like I'm not saying we shouldn't have rules, but at the end of the day, you're teaching them this value system that says, oh, I need to learn why I make decisions instead of just doing what my parents tell me to do. And I think we forget that mold is set very young, right? Like that's why you see so many kids go off the rails when they go to college. I mean, they're out there banging everybody and having sex with everybody and getting drunk with everybody.
It causes all the rebellion.
Yeah, because once they got to the place where I don't have to follow the rules, there was no value system, you know, where they thought through it on
That's
their own.
Actually, we'll link the book because I'm not sure what it's called right now, but Don and Kim read this book. It has to do with helicopter parents and bulldozer parents. So the helicopter parent hovers over someone and makes sure that they're okay. The bulldozer removes every obstacle from their path, so the kid never has to make decisions. Both of them are really, really harmful to the development of a child because, like, Erica always keeps me in check with this. Like, kids have emotions, they have opinions, and they're entitled to those things. So when my kid's angry, I don't get to get mad at her because she's angry or he's angry, right? Either or. Like, they still get those emotions, but we're trying to teach them how to use those emotions appropriately, how to make decisions appropriately. Like, Crew is terrible with climbing over the back of our couch right now. And it's like, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt. And so we've talked through how do we parent him from he does the same thing over and over. I'm just watch him crash and burn and he'll learn. And she's we can be more proactive and make sure he's not doing these things. So even in our own parenting styles, there's things we want to teach our children, from the small things of climbing on a couch, but all the way up to when you have to make a decision for yourself one day. I worry about, did we set you up enough for success when the decision hits you? Because one day you're going to leave my home and you're going to depart and you're going to make a family of your own. Have I done everything that I could to equip you now so that decision that you have to make later in life, you make the right one? I mean, that's the other thing, is praying for their spouses and letting them not only just go into a relationship and just kind of, manage that time together, but how are you going to step in and lead your family from the get-go to show someone this is what I learned from my family? Well,
and again, if you go back to the idea that you're trying to equip leaders, right? So there's this evolution of children. So in the beginning, there's like, they need rules, right? And they need to obey the rules. And whatever those rules are set, and there's consequences that go with it. Then once they get to a certain age, and again, you might never put this on your podcast, but I'm like, then the rules go away. There's only one rule. This is how it was. You only got in trouble for one thing once we got past that, and that was lying. There was no other rule. So, and the reason was just because we wanted to teach them that the greatest thing long-term that will keep you from accomplishing the thing that God wants you to accomplish is trust.
And being truthful to yourself.
That's what I'm saying, trust. Yeah. Like if people can't trust you, right, then you're never going to be able to go where God wants you to. And here's what we wanted to teach you. See, my dad taught me that to lie, and to lie really well. Because if you got in trouble when you were 13, 14, 15, 16, you got your butt whooped. Yeah. Right? So it's easy. Same. Just don't tell them. Yeah. Right? We taught our kids, come to me with anything because you're not going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
So
and I love that, because that's something that I already see with Ren. She's 3. But something will happen. The other day, okay, for instance. Right. So she woke Crew up, and I asked her, I said, did you go in there and wake him up? And at first it was a no. And then about a minute later, she comes out and she goes, actually, Mommy, I did wake him up. Yeah. And I told her that's okay. Like, thank you for, I wanted her to know that it was okay to tell me the truth, and that she feels comfortable enough with me to do that. And that's something we've talked about often too, is we don't want them to ever fear us in that way. Right. And to always be able, to know they can come to us.
Not to be a best friend, but for them to one day come up to me and be like, Dad, there's something I'm struggling with, and I need to tell you something, and I need to talk through something. I need your guidance. I need your leadership now. Right. And I look forward to those conversations, because I am not saying I never had it, but I was the same thing. My dad, I wanted to hide everything from him. My mom, I wanted to hide everything from her. One was really strict. One didn't care. And so it was really hard for me to understand growing up. I hid everything. My whole life before Christ, I just hid it.
Right.
And I stifled it. And then I was never true to who I was. And that was actually challenging, finding my identity in Christ, when it's like, you've never
Who
really
are you?
even, who are you?
Yeah.
And so having people to lead me and go through those things, it's made a difference in my life to be like, no, just be truthful. It's never going to hurt anything.
Well, and if you think about it, I mean, how many people, as their kids get older, talk to them about the things that they value and how to develop a value system inside of them instead of just
it's about being intentional.
Right.
But that is so missed.
Oh, for sure.
In parenting,
Well, it gets messy
you know?
in parenting. So like Erica, talk about that. When you're home, it's not an 8-hour a day job. Like it's a 24/7. The kids are around her. And so what's that like for you? So you have a role as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, all the things.
Yeah.
But I think it's just crazy to really think about, if you're not intentional with the time that you're teaching the value systems of life, and what it is to be a believer and all of that, how it just becomes almost sloppy. And then you lose sense of like how to be organized as you're leading the kids.
Yeah. And then that's something I struggle with all the time still, especially with them being so young. You know, we kind of talked about that. It's hard when they're 3 and 1 years old. But I feel like, just for me, if I don't plan out my day and kind of like set like, okay, this is what we're going to do, it's just like, it kind of like you were saying, becomes sloppy. Like there's no real organization, always behind, always literally like rushing to get from like place to place. And
this is real quick interjection. We've become the family now. Like I used to be 15 minutes early to everything. Everywhere I was, we've become the family. They're like, where's Taylor and Erica? That's us.
It's true.
That's
we're
us.
late a lot.
Like
and it's hard.
we're going to be there. It's just like we're leaving when we should be there. It's because you're always, if you get behind that one day, and it's always the one day you have something going on, you can have Monday through Friday, it's clean as a whistle. Saturday rolls around, you have that one event or that one gathering you're going to, we're out the door late for whatever reason.
Yeah. So I don't know. I really do feel like I'm still learning all of that and trying to figure out how to do a better job at it. And
how well does Taylor support you in that? So like from the standpoint of
called out.
No, I mean, think about this, because I do think that this is the issue, right? So there's this, you're running the home and I'm coming home to, what you've tried to put together, because there is a real reality that what you said. So when kids are young, this is all an evolution, right? So when kids are young, time management, organization is a lot for your sanity, right? Like part of it is I need to stay sane because there's no way to lead
She's
my
staring
children.
at you so seriously right now.
No, because it's so true. My day sometime I'm like,
today
what
before
just
we
happened?
came here,
like it's like 7 p.m. and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like 12 hours of chaos, it feels like.
Just getting ready to come here, I just took the kids over to her parents' house and I stayed over there for about an hour with the kids. Drop them off, and then so she could have time to get done what she needed to get done.
Right. Because that's where, again, so back to a value system, time management, right? So Taylor, as the leader of your family, like as an example, when you're thinking through this, so this is something that Sherry and I did on a regular basis. So we would sit down every Sunday and we'd ask 2 questions like, how am I loving you? So am I loving you well? Because you have a love language. Sometimes I forget about it. I need to know, how am I doing? And how are we doing in accomplishing the goals that God has set forth for us? So that's the intentional opportunity for you to say, hey, you know what? I'm insane.
Yeah.
Right. Like I need this from you, Taylor.
Yeah.
Like I need you to be able to lead in this place and be able to get us, because again, and this is the same concept. So Sarah, just got married and we were talking about this whole idea of time management. She's a single mom, was a single mom trying to raise 3 children. And then everybody wants to say, well, you should be more organized and you should have it all together. And
like it's that simple.
No, like, and again, and I told her like, this is, so when we sit down and say, okay, because what's going to happen in my schedule is you're going to get what you need from me first before anything else. So we're going to sit down and say, what do you need from me this week? And this is why I said it evolves, because it changes every week. Sometimes it's way more and sometimes it's way less. But part of what you're teaching 2 things. One is that this priority system that would say the thing I value more than anything is you. And that's what our children need to see.
Yeah.
You know? And so
I do think Taylor does a really good job with that. We were actually just talking about this. For me, it's easier because I mean, I wear many hats. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a, daughter, all these things. But Taylor wears many hats as well. But his is kind of where mine's more cohesive. His is all over, so he works outside of the home, but he's still a dad. He's still a husband, all these things. So we kind of had to sit down and talk about what that looks like and where I need him. And it all, communication is huge on that, because sometimes I feel like if I'm just trying to handle it all, do it all on my own and let him, be where he needs to be for work, it's better that way. But then eventually it all comes crashing and burning.
And we all have needs and needs to be met. So my priorities, we talked about in those hats, like there's times where I'll be home and I need to be home and be present, because I can be in a home but not be home. Real easily. Because again, I could be busy. I could open my laptop the second I get home and finish work and, fire off emails and reply to people. But I've got kids sitting there and I've got a wife there and I have to show them. That's the thing, is like when I come home, the first thing I want my kids to see is I'm looking for my wife and my kids to say hello, give them a kiss and say, I love you.
And that's what you do a lot of the time when you come home. One of the first things you say is, what do you need? And so,
where are we at?
Where are we at
it's
right
like I'm
now?
walking into a battlefield.
And kind of like we talked about earlier, kids, especially with like a stay-at-home mom, they'll push the boundaries a little bit more with me. But when Taylor comes home, it's kind of like
the law.
You could say that. But also it's just like things become a little bit more intentional, where we'll kind of sit down and then we'll, do what we need to do, and they want to, tell him about, what they've been doing or whatever. Yeah. So it helps in that sense.
But you have to play off of one another too, because like if I come home and I can just see the look of like, I need to get in and get, roll my sleeves up. It's time to go. It's dad mode. She needs a break. I have to be able to know my wife and love her enough to know she needs something without her having to ask for it. The other thing is I have to be able to fill in those roles. Essentially, wherever I can see that she needs me, I need to be there. And then vice versa. Like she needs to be able to recognize I came home, long day, a messed up, encounter or whatever. And she recognizes like he needs to decompress for a little bit. I'm going to kind of keep the kids, or we just feed off each other. But again, like we don't negate the fact that, but once I come home, what's really sad to think about is the clock doesn't stop and it doesn't pause. So that the seconds are ticking away the second I walk in the door. So however long I choose to dwell on something or she dwells on something, we miss the opportunity then to show our kids how to be resilient as leaders as well, and say, there are going to be times where you're distracted or you need to decompress, but there's also times where we need to step up and still spend that intentional time making disciples within our own home. Like there's times where I come home and she's got that place on lockdown. She's like, hey, what's the scripture for today on the fridge for what Charity put out for the children's ministry? She's like, what scriptures are we reading? And there's times where I'm like, well, she's got this. That also doesn't mean that just because she's got it, I don't need to step in. Like I'm still a father and I'm still a husband. So I think it's really important for us to consider like that we have our roles and we have all these hats. But just because you're in the presence of someone who looks like they have it all together doesn't mean they don't need your support through that.
Well, and again, I mean, I would assume this is something that you've both ran into. I mean, the greatest tool in time management is margin. So if you have no margin in your schedule, because again, back to when people get the wrong idea of time management. Time management is not about getting more done. It's getting the right things done and making sure that we're doing it the right way. And so a lot of people are like, oh, if I get my time managed, I can do more. No, you're building in margin, and that's for a couple different reasons. You can't schedule in movements of God. So you can't schedule in when the Holy Spirit tells you to do. Right. And if you have no margin in your schedule, you can't. Right. And you can't schedule in when your kids need you or when your wife needs you. And if you have no margin, build in your schedule. Because again, very specifically, I have margin built in, and it says it in my block schedule. Like what this is, I have what I call it family time, free time, something. It's in there, and it's for multiple reasons, but the main reason is if you call me and ask me if I can do something at this time, if you're doing normal time management, the idea is, oh yeah, I have time. But what I do is block it out from the beginning. And so if you call me and say, do you have any time? I'm like, no, I don't have any time.
Well, I think
That's
that was a
good.
big challenge for me. Again, when we sat down, you kind of walked me through time management, and you had me report to you, like, think of every role you have. Tell me how much time a week you're spending in that role, or really, and we broke it down to days.
Sure.
And if you really look at the things you're trying to accomplish in a day, it's mind-boggling how little time you really have. You're talking about sleeping, eating, working, being a dad, a husband, any other things that you're doing, cooking. Like, it's all something. There's always something to do. And when you put it down on paper, you'll fill in the 24-hour day. And if you didn't put any error in there, commuting, resting, prayer, silence, time alone with family, you will feel like you'll look at your schedule and be like, I've got 4 things in the morning and 2 things in the evening. It looks like my early morning's open, my afternoon's open, and my late evening's open. But if you look at it that way without making that intentional time to be with the people that are closest to you, you'll miss it.
Well, and
you'll
that's why I
take
said
Yeah.
time management's more of a tool to guard
Yeah.
than it is to be able to be more efficient.
Yes.
I look at it as a guard. Like, so that's the whole reason, like, sit down before anybody else steals your time. Block out.
And that was actually a question
Monopolizers.
I was going to ask, especially in your roles. Do you guys feel like people will often take advantage of your time?
Yeah.
And then how do you go about that? How do you go forward, with people?
So let me answer this one first. So
Is that a funny one?
I
It's
think
a
again,
funny one because I think we're at different places. I just don't ever answer
yeah.
anybody.
Well, this is what I say.
I only answer a few people. I only answer emails at a certain time. I only
Yeah.
answer phone calls at a certain time.
It all depends what you're doing,
But-
right?
Well,
Like,
I'll
so like if I don't have time, I'll tell you I don't have time, but I wouldn't know if I didn't have time if I wasn't sitting down looking at what I was trying to accomplish. Whereas, so like Mike even has time in that schedule that he breaks down. He's like, this is when I'm replying and responding and, texting, emails. It's
I do.
broken down to that.
I only email like 2 times a day.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have enough time in the day to get to everybody, right?
I learned this a long time ago. If you don't guard your time, somebody will steal it. And a lot of people are, to this day, I'd still say there's people that are still mad about it at the church. But I always said 2 things and I say it in every Discover Life. One of the things you're going to understand is that I love Jesus and my family more than I love you. So that will be reflected in my time. So you're not going to get to me all the time. I'm not answering your phone. Because the other thing is that the problem with people is that they want you to work out of their urgent.
Yes.
And I'm not doing it. I'm
Yeah.
just not doing it. Like, in most of the time, like, I won't text back for a day or 2 and it's already taken care of. You didn't need me anyway,
There's a lesson in that.
No, there is.
Yeah.
And I
just
think the other
don't.
thing is this: it's like, as a church, you have to set the precedent for what we're calling the family to do, right? And I'm not saying we are perfect in our own personal lives,
Right.
But like, if we're going to say families need to prioritize time, we have to be able to show them what it's like to prioritize time and understand that, like, when the "I need you right nows," like, those have to be filtered, right? There are emergencies, and then there are times where you're just like, okay, well, what is your need? And it might not fit what I have available right now.
Right.
Because I haven't seen my family. I can't come to your house at 8:00 just to talk about something that I don't even know it's going to produce, right? So it all has to be filtered through the lens of the priorities the goals that we're trying to accomplish each day, which really is actually, we should just talk about goals, because if I don't have goals in ministry, I become counterproductive. I will just be busy and I will just meet with people and I won't get anything done other than making people feel good that I've met with them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the same thing, we've talked about this, and this is what's challenging for us. And Mike, I'll let you take the reins here, but setting goals for not only your job, but your marriage and for your kids. It's like, that's something we don't have the marriage mission statement. Like, we haven't sat down, and we should. And
Yeah.
we're going to, obviously.
Well, the only reason, though, is so it's going to determine how you spend your time, right? So, like, if you have a mission statement, and again, I don't want it to make it like you have to have all this posted all over your house and you have to, evaluate these goals, but you are going to go back to when you're evaluating your time, you're going to go back to, well, I don't know, what is our mission? So if this is our mission, because again, you're going to experience this probably more than Taylor. So as a pastor of a church, everybody wants to be with you, right? And get to know you, right? So as that goes, you're going to be like, hey, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm not hanging out with those people.
Yeah.
That's not in our mission statement. In our mission statement, when Sherry and I talked, there was a part of it to build it intentionally to the leaders we have and reach the lost, and so it was broke down on how much time we were going to spend in each one of them because Sherry's gift was hospitality, right? And so the idea would be is that, people would want to be with us as an example Sundays after church all the time. Can you go out for lunch? Can you do this? And I'm like, nope.
Family
They're like, why? And this is why, because my kids, Brady would bring kids home from Taylor. Lexi would bring kids home from Grace, and they would come to our house for dinner, and so we cherry cooked them dinner, and we did that. And I'm like, reaching these kids for Jesus is way more important than me sitting down having a meal with you. And I'm not devaluing you,
Right.
but I have to make a decision based upon my mission, how I'm going to spend my time.
Yeah.
And you're setting the example to show your kids, like, we value you reaching your friends. So we're going to help partner and support you with that. So bring them home. We'll feed them. We'll create fellowship with them. And then, I'm hoping and I'm assuming they learn from that. But if you then were to be taking time away and saying, no, I will go out to eat with these people, then your kids are like, Dad's gone. He's not home.
Well, I mean, it's both. I mean, I think the things, and maybe you should ask my kids this, but I think the things that my kids would tell you over time is that I will never value, and this is very important to me, and I think it's harder for a woman than it is for a man, but I think this is really important. You should never love your kids more than you love your husband.
True.
And that's a big deal because I see a lot of moms falling in love with their kids, because, and again, no fault of your own. That's who you're with all day, right?
Exactly.
And so that's your focus all day long. And then it's like, I have nothing left, to give my husband, or I have nothing left. And so again, back to when you create boundaries, that's the biggest thing. So when you do time management, it creates very strict boundaries, and so it didn't matter. And our kids knew this, not to this day, like, listen, we're going to go on vacation without you. We're going on dates without you.
Yeah.
And I want you to learn that I do love your mom way more than I love you.
Yeah.
Well, you're also
I love
teaching
you.
them, it's biblical though, to teach them they're going to leave their father and mother to create a family of their own. We've talked about this before, is like the family, while it involves the kids for a period of time, it's really the mother and father is where it starts. And then what I've heard people say this, family have said this, friends, people at church have said this. You raise your kids and you serve them for 18 years, for each one that leaves your home. Then you're redating your spouse for the first time in 18 to however many years it's been. And then you don't know where to start. And you've missed all that time of loving the one person that you're going to be alone with.
Yeah. But the thing, and again, when I talk about these boundaries, some of those boundaries are simple, right? And easy. The ones that are hard are like, as an example, so Cherry had a big family. They did everything together, and I'm like, we're not going to that birthday party or that birthday party or that get together or that thing. Yeah. And her family got really upset because we were spending time with lost people, new families, and new relationships. It's a boundary. Like, I know you. I love you. I get all of that, but I'm not wrapping every bit of my discretional time into going to every kid's birthday party. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to every get together. I'm not going. Based upon a mission, not based upon whether I love you, don't, because they're all mad.
Because that's how people, that's how people
like, you didn't show up and you didn't know. I'm like, I know I didn't show up for a reason.
Yeah.
These people don't know Jesus. And I want you to know that, yes, you're good.
Right.
And we'll spend time together, but I'm not wrapping my whole life up, because this happens in families all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Big families. I mean, it's like every weekend there's something to do, or during the week, there's always something
Our
to do.
summertime is littered with.
And I'm not saying
all the
it's
time,
wrong. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I think, so for us, when we bought our home, what we wanted to do was host.
Yeah.
So kind of like you guys, you were talking about that.
Yeah.
That was our intention, was to make that a place where we can bring people in and disciple to them.
Yeah.
Because not only does that give us that opportunity, but it also gives us the opportunity to be together rather than Taylor always being gone, So it really also brings that family time together and an opportunity for our kids to see, what we're doing and what we want to train them up to do.
Right. Yeah. And getting them to learn the concept of is that if you're ever going to do anything significant in life, you have to learn to separate or to get rid of things that are good and do things that are great.
Yeah.
You know, because what we tend to do is be involved in a lot of good things.
Yeah.
Right? They're not wrong. They're not hurting anybody, but we don't tend to teach our children or even the people around us that you're right. These are all good things, you know, and these are all, because again, just as an example, I mean, I lead a men's group on Monday nights and lead now a youth group of boys on Thursday nights. And people are like, well, you should be teaching a class a class during the week. And you're like, dude, I got to pick. So there's like 60 or 70 guys, and a lot of these guys are new in their faith or learning their faith or growing in their faith. These are kids that, you know, a lot of them are just trying to figure out whether they know Jesus or not.
Yeah.
And then you want me to teach you the same thing you already knew?
That's a huge call, I think, for the church right now, is to really understand, like, if we are going to be a church, the collective body of believers, and we're going to be as effective as we can be, we can't let it be just the staff members creating groups.
Right. Like
and
that person.
I was just talking
can
about
go
this
and do
today
that.
in some of my meetings. It's like, so many people come to me and say, hey, I really want to start a men's group. And they want me to do it, really, is what they want. And I'm like, I would love to, can't. I pray for this all the time too, but if we had leaders in our churches understanding that they need to manage not only their own families and their own time, but to reach the lost, to step up and live the call of the Great Commission is to say, I'm going to step up and lead a group. And that's where I will help you, give you resources and meet with you, you know, occasionally to help you with those goals. But if more people would step up instead of waiting for the church to start it and just start their groups, we would be multiplying at a rate that I don't even think we could understand. But that comes from people getting out of the place of just managing their faith and leading their faith.
Yeah.
And it has to do with, are you being intentional with the time that you're spending making disciples? Because I think we miss that.
Well, and again, the only way you're going to be okay with that, and that's why I've always said that's why it's important to talk about what you value and what is your mission. So you go back to the reason that it's great to have a marriage mission statement, and the reason it's great to talk through your values before you ever even get to time management is because it's going to be challenged.
Yes.
So you're for sure going to be challenged if you choose to do this, you are going to be significantly challenged by other people on why.
Right.
And so it's not hard for me. So when people get on me about like not answering right away or any of these other things that people just expect me to be able to do, like I'm okay with that challenge because I've already pre-decided before you get on me what I value instead of trying to decide, maybe they're right. Maybe I should have.
Right, and
I've
question
already pre-decided
Yeah.
the things that are going to be valued of me, and I give them time.
And I think that's what people, like, we have to realize this, like, and we're still learning this, obviously, but you have to spend time in the beginning getting this going. So you have to spend time trying to learn the systems and the processes and really evaluating your day to day, and then sitting down, investing in one another as a family and as a couple or whatever that is, and saying, this is how we're going to manage our time because we value these things. And then but I think it's the barrier almost. Because once you've done that and you've identified, like you said, these are the things that my family, this is what we value. It's very easy then to make every decision is already filtered. It, like you said, it's pre-decided.
It's like a baseline.
So
to
when
go
someone
back
reaches
to,
out, you can
you
really
know?
quickly go, nope, I don't have that time tonight. This was family game night. We've had this set forever. We do it every Friday night. Like, and there, like, obviously there is margin built in or if there is an emergency, there's times where things do change. But at the same time, you have to be able to spend the time in the beginning. So that way this process becomes a normal routine in your family's life, and you miss out on, like, it's not this chaotic on a whim trying to figure it out. It's very organized, it's very thought out, and it kind of runs itself after.
Well, I think
there's
I think that the two levels of time management. So Erica talked on one of them is I need a plan to get through the day so I don't kill somebody. Right?
Yeah, pretty
like
much.
I do. I mean, I need a plan. It's just, I have to have a schedule just to get through the chaos of a day so I can keep my sanity. Because the problem when you say time management, everybody's like, I got to go buy a calendar and I got to, put it in everything and get it all right. And I'm saying, okay, so that's a part of what you're doing. But honestly, the thing I would suggest before you go out and buy a calendar is sit down, whether it's with your spouse or whether it's with your kids, and talk about what you value.
Yeah.
Because that conversation takes a lot more time than just, I think it's pretty simple to take a to-do list and put it in a block schedule.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's pretty easy to look at what you have to get done in a week and make it fit. Like, I think that's the easiest part of time management. And it's what the sad thing is, most people don't have anything.
Yeah.
You know, that's really sad.
Yeah.
But once they do get there, it's like, I just need to take all the thing and get them the things of the day and make them more organized, which is a part of it. But the bigger part of it is the lasting impact, the standing at the edge of the cornfield, convincing people that it's worth the work.
Yeah.
Convincing your children that it's worth being different, right? Because you're going to teach your kids to be different. Like, if you teach your kids to be leaders, they are not going to be accepted in the mainstream society, right?
No, it's a big discipline.
Right.
It's
So,
huge.
or the way you guys choose to spend time, like, that's not normal for people, right? So if you choose those types of things, like if you spend time doing that, like, you're going to be challenged in it. And so if you haven't put in the time, and I guess I would suggest to everybody, it's an ongoing process. It's an evolution as your kids are growing. I mean, we talked about this earlier, like, once girls get to be a certain age, like, they need their father more, because your young daughters right now, fathers are trying to figure out what kind of man they want. And if you're not going to give them what they need, then they're going to go find it in somebody else. Right. And so that's hugely important, you know, and then these young boys that are trying to figure, and men are probably pretty good at this, be a man, right? Get out there, do the things you're supposed to do. But what they need is a mom that they can come and put their head on.
Yeah.
Right. A mom. And does mom have time for that? Does mom have the ability for me to be able to, you know, come up and be nurtured, you know, in the way that I need nurtured? And that grows, right? And that's different. And back to, if you don't have margin built in your life, when your son wants to come and sit down with you and just sit on the couch, you'd be like, but you're gone. Like, you've lost all your, and
you
can't
the day. Tune in and, like, actually be present in the moment, because you've got something else you're ready to accomplish, and then you miss that. The next thing. And we've said this, the big thing is, like, we're trying as parents to create an example so that our kids can find identity in Christ and take on their own faith. And if we're not showing it, they're going to find it in the world. And that's, like, one of the biggest fears, but also one of the biggest motivators for us to be really intentional with our time. So, Mike, thanks for your talk today about time management. I hope it helps anyone who's listening. I know it really helped me. And again, thanks for being here with us.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for joining us today on our episode with Pastor Mike. For more information and resources, please visit our Life Church Huntington app, click on the Resources tab, Finding the Family, and there you'll find all additional information. We look forward to seeing you next week.